What's going on, guys? Evan Preco here. You are watching SG1 Sports Big Ten Football. We've got our Week 11 recap in this video, and we had a lot of good games throughout the Big Ten this weekend. This first game was not one of them. Maryland at number 1 Ohio State. The final score of this game, the Buckeyes destroyed the Terps 73-14. And for Ohio State's Justin Fields went 16 of 25 for 200 yards, 3 touchdown passes. Rushing-wise, he had 5 carries for 28 yards, averaging 5.5 yards a carry, and a touchdown run. Master Teague III was their leading rusher. He had 18 carries for 111 yards, averaging 6.2 yards a carry. J.K. Dobbins also had a good game. He had 12 carries for 90 yards, averaging 7.5 yards a carry, and 2 touchdown runs. Garrett Wilson was their leading receiver, the freshman. He had 4 receptions for 82 yards, averaging 20.5 yards a catch, and a touchdown. Ohio State ran the ball for 383 yards, and they had 705 total yards of offense, 1 turnover. For Maryland, Josh Jackson got the start, and Tyrell Pigram played as well. Jackson went 4 of 9 for 35 yards and a touchdown pass. Pigram went 4 of 8 for 42 yards and an interception. Their leading passer threw only 42 yards. Javon Leake was their leading rusher. He had 9 carries for 55 yards, averaging 6.1 yards a carry. And Dante Demas Jr. had 1 reception for 26 yards, which was a touchdown. He was their leading receiver. Maryland ran for only 62 yards, and they only had 139 total yards of offense, plus 2 turnovers. Not surprised at all. I knew we were not going to get, that amazing Ohio State-Maryland game that we got last year with the Buckeyes holding on 52-51. With the way Maryland has kind of fallen apart so far this season, we knew that this was going to be a blowout. Ohio State undoubtedly looks like the best team in the country right now, and it's kind of interesting what's going to happen with them as far as the playoff ranking goes when it gets released. They have every right in the world to be number 1. I personally don't think they will be. I have LSU going up to number 1 just because of that big win against Alabama. LSU has definitely had the harder competition, in my opinion, but they have shown weaknesses with their defense. For Ohio State, I mean, they haven't really had to play anybody that hard yet. But the thing with the Buckeyes is that they haven't shown any weakness on offense, on defense, on special teams, nothing. They have showed absolutely no weaknesses at all. They have some of the best play. They have probably the skill-wise the best team in the country, in my opinion, with a future NFL roster. And their coaching, is just tremendous. They've done a great job this year, and they just don't show any weaknesses when you just watch the film. They just look utterly fantastic. Ryan Day has done a great job with that program so far this year. So it'll be interesting to see if they stay at number 1 in the playoff poll or if they move down to number 2. Personally, I don't think it really matters because at the end of the day, they're going to go. They should go to the playoff if they win out. They will go to the playoff, and they should win out. I would love to see Ohio State and Maryland play either in a semifinal game or the national championship, and I'm hoping it comes down to that. That would be a great matchup. For Maryland, they're just struggling. Like I said, they have just fallen apart. This is their 1, 2. This is their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th straight loss. So it's definitely not gone good for them in the second half of the season. We already knew that. And I can't really think of any positives for them to have. They have a bye week this upcoming weekend, and then they have to play Nebraska the week after, and they finish with Michigan State. I'm not sure if they're going to win either of those games, but I guess we'll find out. But good one for Ohio State. They look just absolutely dominant right now, and we'll see how they're able to finish out the season. Upcoming, they're going to be playing Penn State, and they got Michigan the last week of the season, and those should be 2 fantastic games to watch. But next week, they've got Rutgers, and that should be a blowout as well. I'm not sure if it can get any worse than 73-14, but I guess we'll find out. So good win for them. They have a bright end of the season coming up, and these last 2 games of the season should just both be fantastic to watch, in my opinion. All right, now we've got our first good game of the weekend for the conference. Number 4, Penn State at number 17, Minnesota. And Minnesota wins a massive game, 31-26. And for the Golden Gophers, Tanner Morgan went 18 of 20 for 339 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Rodney Smith was their leading rusher. He had 18 carries for 51 yards, averaging almost 3 yards a carry. And Rashad Bateman went off. He had 7 receptions for 203 yards, averaging 29 yards a catch exactly, and a touchdown. Tyler Johnson had a good game too. He had 7 receptions for 104 yards, averaging just under 15 yards a catch, and a touchdown. Minnesota ran for 121 yards, and they had 460 total yards of offense and only 1 turnover. For the Penn State Nittany Lions, Sean Clifford went 23 of 43 for 340 yards, a touchdown pass, but 3 interceptions. Journey Brown was their leading rusher. He had 14 carries for 124 yards, averaging just under 9 yards a carry and 2 touchdown runs. KJ Hamler was their leading receiver. He had 7 receptions for 119 yards, averaging 17 yards a catch exactly. And Pat Freiermuth, their All-American tight end, had a good game as well. 7 receptions, 101 yards, averaging 14.5 yards a catch. Penn State ran the ball for 178 yards, and they had 518 total yards of offense. But the 3 turnovers really cost them in this game because they ended up giving Minnesota the victory. For most of this game, it looked like Minnesota had Penn State's offense in check. Now, on paper, it doesn't look like it because Penn State had 518 total yards of offense. They out-yarded Minnesota by over 50 yards. But, the turnovers really cost them. And Minnesota controlled most of the game. There were times where Penn State's offense really got going, especially late in the game, when they drove down the field and almost scored, if not for a penalty to push them back before the interception. But this is a huge win for Minnesota. Their offense played fantastically too. Rashad Bateman, he's a sophomore, and he was able to do that against Penn State's defense. Over 200 receiving yards and a touchdown. That's unbelievable. Tanner Morgan was throwing the ball around. He completed 90% of his passes, threw for over 300 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's got to be close to a perfect passer rating, if not. So that's just unbelievable offensive performance by Minnesota, scoring 30-plus points on a defense that looked pretty damn good throughout the entire season. This is a huge win for the Gophers. I can't think of the last time they won a game this big with this much importance on a season. I can't think of it. Because with this, they've moved to 9-0. I believe they're going to move into the top 10. They should move into the top 10 with the playoff rankings, and they knock off a top 5 team in a very historic program that's been very good the last few seasons. So this is just a massive win for them, and I think that they pretty much, I don't want to say that they've won the West already, because it's not official yet. Next week they play at Iowa, and then they play Northwestern after that, and then they finish the season with Paul Bunyan's Axe game against the Wisconsin Badgers. Now, I think if Minnesota wins one more game, I believe that they will win the West. I think they have to win Northwestern, and then they have to beat. So they have to win 2 more games. They will beat Northwestern, I believe, and then you have to beat Wisconsin as well, because Wisconsin's behind them by 2 games. So if they were to lose the Wisconsin game and then lose to Iowa, they would not win the West. So they've got to win 2 more games. Northwestern they should be able to do, and then they should be able to beat either Iowa or Wisconsin, if not both of them. The Iowa game is in Iowa City, but the Wisconsin game, luckily for them, will be in Minneapolis. So they're on a good path right now, and we'll see what happens if they do win the West, what happens if they play in the Big Ten championship game as far as winning that game and moving up in the rankings. We'll see where they go bowl-wise. They're looking very good right now. This is a very historic-looking season for the Gophers, and this is a much different team than what we saw in September in their first few games, because I was very critical of the way they were playing, and I judged them a lot for it, but they have just looked on fire now. They're blowing out teams that they should be beating, and they have just beaten one of the best teams in the Big Ten and the country. So massive win for them, and we'll see what ends up happening. For Penn State, it's a tough loss for them, very tough loss for them, but I don't think they're going to drop that far. They're playing on the road against a good football team, and they lost by 5. I think they'll stay within the top 10, and they still control their own destiny. If they win out, beating Ohio State in the process, they win the Big Ten East, and they go to the Big Ten Championship to most likely play Minnesota again. So we'll see what ends up happening with them. Next week, the Penn State Nittany Lions will be playing Indiana, and Indiana's looking pretty good right now too. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. I think both teams are in great shape right now, and especially Minnesota, they're undefeated. For Penn State, yes, it hurts, but they can use this as motivation to move forward and to beat Ohio State and go to the Big Ten championship. But both teams looking great right now. This was a fantastic game to watch. Next up, we have another good one. Purdue at Northwestern, and a good game this was. Purdue won at the last second 24-22. And for the Boilermakers, Aiden O'Connell, their third-string quarterback, got the start due to Jack Plummer's injury. He went 34 of 50 for 271 yards, 2 touchdown passes, but also 2 interceptions. So he was productive, but he also made some mistakes. King Daru had 9 carries for 43 yards, averaging just under 5 yards a carry and a touchdown run. He was their leading rusher. David Bell was their leading receiver, 14 receptions, 115 yards, 8.2 average, and a touchdown catch. Purdue ran the ball for 74 yards, but they did have 345 total yards of offense, and they also turned the ball over 2 times. For Northwestern, Aiden Smith started. He went 19 of 31 for 184 yards, 2 touchdown passes, and an interception. Kyrick McGowan was their leading rusher. He had 17 carries for 146 yards, averaging 8.5 yards a carry, and a touchdown run. Riley Lees was their leading receiver. He's been their leading receiver all season. 8 receptions for 62 yards, averaging 7.8 yards a catch, and a touchdown. Northwestern ran for 251 yards, and they had 435 total yards of offense. They turned the ball over twice as well. This game was pretty much all Northwestern in the first half. They looked pretty good. Purdue struggled. In the first quarter, the Wildcats scored 2 touchdowns. They went up 14-0. In the second quarter, Purdue scored a touchdown from King Daru, and Northwestern would force a safety off of an intentional grounding penalty in the end zone, so they would get 2 points and be up 16-7 at halftime. And then the second half, Jeff Brom and the Boilermakers adjusted. They scored 2 touchdowns in the third quarter to take the lead. And then in the fourth quarter, Northwestern would score to go up 22-21. They would miss a field goal with about 2 minutes left, giving Purdue the ball in good field position, only down by 1 point. And with 8 seconds to go, J.D. Dellinger hit a 39-yard field goal to take the lead and pretty much win the game. I'm going to be honest, I did not expect this game to be this good. I thought it would be a little more in Purdue's favor, just because, they had been playing well. They had beaten Nebraska the week before, and Northwestern has been struggling. So I definitely thought Purdue would definitely be more productive, but I guess at the same time, you're starting Aiden O'Connell, your third stringer, so there are going to be some mistakes made. And they made a lot of them in the first quarter. A good win for Purdue, even though we all pretty much expected it to happen, because now they moved to 4-6 on the season, and they're 2 wins away from a bowl game. These are not 2 easy games, though. They have to play Wisconsin in Camp Randall Stadium, and then they have to play Indiana. Luckily, they will be at Ross-Ade Stadium at home for that. So you have 1 game against a good team that they could maybe upset and win. You don't really know. But then the other game, I don't see them beating Wisconsin. I just don't see it at all. With Wisconsin's running game and that defense, I don't see Purdue being able to stop them, especially if Jack Plummer's not going to be ready to go in 2 weeks from now. They do get 2 weeks. They have a bye week this weekend, so they'll have 2 weeks to prepare for it, to get healthy, and spend extra time in the film room. So we'll see what ends up happening. They've beaten some teams that I didn't think that they would beat. They beat Nebraska. They almost beat Iowa. I did not think that would happen. So we'll end up seeing what happens with them. For Northwestern, it's just another loss in what has been a bad season for them. They're gonna finish the season playing Illinois, but before that, they're going to play University of Massachusetts this weekend, so that should be a win for them, a confidence win. They're favored by 40.5. But then they have to play the Golden Gophers after that. So you've got, in their last 3 games, you got a game that they should probably be able to win, a game that I don't think they're going to win against Northwestern, and then a game that they probably won't, against Minnesota, and then a game that they probably won't win against Illinois. So they're looking to finish the season at about 2-10. We'll see if they can, play for pride and have some good plays in the last few games and possibly pull off an upset. So we'll see about that. Good win for Purdue. They're slowly creeping to bowl eligibility, even though it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Northwestern struggling. They have all season. So we'll see what ends up happening with both of those teams at the end of the season. Next up, we've got a fantastic game. Illinois at Michigan State. Illinois won this game 37-34, and with 6 wins on the season for them, they're going bowling. Congratulations to the Illinois Fighting Illini. They're going to a bowl game for the first time in, God, I don't even know how many years it's been. For Brandon Peters, he went 22 of 42 for 369 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and a pick. Reggie Corbin was their leading rusher. He had 7 carries for only 29 yards, averaging just over 4 yards a carry. He did have a touchdown run. Josh Amiter-Bebe had 4 receptions for 178 yards, averaging 44.5 yards a catch, and 2 touchdown catches. Both of them huge touchdown catches. Illinois ran the ball for only 36 yards, but they did have 405 total yards of offense. They did turn the ball over twice, however. For the Michigan State Spartans, Brian Lewerke went 19 of 36 for 251 yards, 1 touchdown pass, and 3 interceptions. Rushing-wise, he had 11 carries for 96 yards, averaging 8.7 yards a carry, and a touchdown run. Elijah Collins was their leading rusher, however. He had 28 carries for 170 yards, averaging just over 6 yards a carry, and 2 touchdown runs. Cody White was their leading receiver. He had 7 receptions for 128 yards, averaging 18.3 yards a catch. Michigan State ran for 275 yards and had 526 total yards of offense, but the 4 turnovers really killed them in this game. So to kind of recap what happened in this game, Michigan State looked fantastic in the first half. For most of the first half, they did. In fact, for most of the first 3 quarters, they did. They scored on their first drive to go up 7-0. Illinois would tag on a field goal, and then Michigan State would score again to make it 14-3. That was the score at the end of 1. In the second quarter, Trey Mosley would catch a touchdown pass from Lewerke, make it 21-3, and then Elijah Collins would score again to make it 28-3. And then they were driving again, up 28-3, about to go 35-3, and Brian Lewerke threw an interception in the end zone that kind of started what was going to be a ride for Illinois here. So he throws an interception. He threw another interception right before halftime to give Illinois the ball in decent field position, and Josh Amiter-Bebe catches a 46-yard Hail Mary right at the end of the half to make the score 28-10, giving them a little bit of momentum going into halftime, and that would really help them out in the second half. Not much happened in the third quarter. Matt Coughlin hit a 23-yard field goal to go up 31-10. So Michigan State was up 31-10 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Right away, Josh Amiter-Bebe caught an 83-yard touchdown pass to make it 31-17. And then a few minutes later, they would score again from a touchdown from Reggie Corbin to make it 31-24. And then they would score a third straight touchdown to almost tie the game. It was a pick six, a 76-yard pick six, and they missed the PAT, so Michigan State was still winning 31-30. Michigan State would tag on a field goal with 3 minutes to go up 34-30, and then Illinois drove right down the field, and with 5 seconds left in the game, Brandon Peters hit Daniel Barker for a 5-yard touchdown pass to go up 37-34 and win the game. So a big comeback, the biggest comeback in Illinois school history. This was a fantastic game to watch, and this is a huge blow for Michigan State. You talk about a season that you can argue it's been up and down, but it's been mainly down for most of it. This would have been a good win for them. Illinois was on a roll. They had won, 3 straight? And for the way that Michigan State played in the first half, they looked fantastic. They were moving the ball. They were running the ball well, throwing the ball well, up until right before halftime. Their defense was forcing turnovers. It was going good, and they kept Illinois from getting yards in the first half. They were up 28-3. They turned into the Atlanta Falcons, and they blew it. They lost the game right at the end of the game. And for Illinois, this is their 4th straight win. I don't know what it is that they did in the Wisconsin game to win that game or how they prepared for it, but that really sparked something because they have had a complete turnaround here so far in the second half of the season. They've won 4 straight. They look fantastic, and now they're going to a bowl game for the first time in years. I would say Lovie Smith keeps his job. He did a fantastic job, in my opinion, adjusting at halftime to come back and move the ball well on offense and stopping them on defense. So this is a big win for Illinois. They're now 6-4 on the season. Michigan State falls to 4-5. So now they're sub 500. I'm not sure. I think they're going to go to a bowl game, but I'm not sure what bowl game they go to. Next week they play the in-state rival at Michigan in Ann Arbor, and then they play Rutgers. So they should be able, and then they finish with Rutgers in Maryland. So they should be able, to win those last two games. I'm not sure that they're going to beat Michigan. So it's looking like they might go 6-6, and they're going to play in a small bowl game. And I'm not sure what's going to happen to Mark D'Antonio after the season. I don't think that Michigan State can really fire him, considering the success that he has given them in what has been a very unsuccessful program before his tenure there. I think that, he might resign or retire, because this is 3 or 4 years straight now where they haven't really been elite. 2016 they went 3-9. 2017 I think they went 9-3, 8-4. They were okay. Last year they went 6-6, which was way below preseason expectations. And this year again they're below preseason expectations again, and they're sub 500, and they're losing games that they normally wouldn't be losing. So, I mean, here's the thing. This is their fourth straight loss ever since they beat Indiana by 9 points. They got blown out by Ohio State, obliterated by Wisconsin, blown out by Penn State, and now they've lost to Illinois. So they're 4-6 now. They were 4-2 a month ago, and now they've fallen to 4-6. So I'm not sure. I still think they'll finish the season on a positive note, but the fact that they can't win games, in late October, early November, that's really when your season matters. That's when you're really getting into your conference play, and when things get tough. And if you can't win those games, especially if you're losing big to the teams that you play, I think it's time to make a change at the coaching position. And all respect to Mark D'Antonio, but I think it's time. I don't know if Michigan State's going to fire him, but I think it's time to make a choice that maybe, he just doesn't have it anymore, and it's time to hang up the playbook and retire. And I hate saying it, but I think that's the cold, hard truth for right now. For Illinois to finish out the season, they're going to play Iowa in 2 weeks. They've got a bye next week, so they'll have 2 weeks to prepare for Iowa in Iowa City, and then they finish with Northwestern. So they should be able to win at least one more game, and we'll see what happens in 2 weeks, but they are just on a roll right now. And this was a fantastic game to watch, and I highly recommend you go watch the highlights for it, because you'll really enjoy watching some good football in that. But yeah, great game. Big win for Illinois. Tough loss for Michigan State. Last but not least, we've got number 18 Iowa and number 13 Wisconsin, and this was a pretty good game as well. The final score of this game, Wisconsin won it close, 24-22, and for the Badgers, Jack Cohen went 16 of 25 for 173 yards, 2 touchdown passes, and a pick. Jonathan Taylor was their leading rusher. He had 31 carries for 250 yards, averaging just over 8 yards a carry. Quintez Cephas was their leading receiver. He had 5 receptions for 94 yards, averaging 18.8 yards a catch and a touchdown. Wisconsin ran the ball for 300 total yards, and they had 473 total yards of offense. They did have 2 turnovers, however. For the Hawkeyes, Nate Stanley went 17 of 28 for 208 yards and 2 touchdown passes. Torrin Young was their leading rusher. He had 9 carries for 44 yards, averaging just under 5 yards a carry. And Tyrone Tracy Jr. was their leading receiver. 5 receptions, 130 yards, 26.0 yards per catch, and a touchdown catch. Iowa ran for only 87 yards, but they only had 295 total yards of offense, and they turned the ball over once. This game was pretty much kind of all Wisconsin throughout it. They took a big lead early. Well, in the first quarter, Iowa kicked a field goal, and they went up 3-0. So that was the score at the end of the first. And in the second quarter, Wisconsin would score 2 touchdowns, and Iowa would kick another field goal, so it would be 14-6 Wisconsin at halftime. In the third quarter, Quintez Cephas would catch a 27-yard touchdown, and they would go up 21-6. And then in the fourth quarter, it was pretty much all Iowa. So they scored a touchdown. Nico Rajani scored a touchdown catch to make it 21-13. Then they would kick a field goal to make it 21-16. And then Wisconsin would add a field goal with about 3.5 to go in the game to make it 24-16. And Iowa would score a touchdown with 3 minutes left in the game, a 75-yard touchdown catch for Tyrone Tracy Jr. The 2-point conversion failed, so they could not tie the game. They were down by 2, and they would not end up getting the ball back. So Wisconsin held on to win this game, probably closer than a lot of people wished it would be, but a good win for them after suffering 2 straight losses. So it's a good way to pick it up. They beat a ranked team. Yes, they were at home, but a ranked team. A conference win for them. And next week they're going to be playing the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and we'll see what ends up happening with that game. They should be able to win it, and then they play Purdue after that. They should be able to win that game as well, and then they finish the game against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, who look utterly fantastic right now. That should be a pretty good game as well. They moved to 7-2 on the season. Their Big Ten West hopes are still alive technically. They would need to win out, and then they would need Minnesota to either lose to Iowa or Northwestern. But I don't think they're going to lose to Northwestern. So they're pretty much hoping that Iowa can beat Minnesota this upcoming weekend, and then they have to win out. And if that happens, they win the West, and they'll play either Ohio State or Penn State or maybe even Michigan, but probably not Michigan, in the Big Ten championship game. But we'll see if they even make it that far. For the Iowa Hawkeyes, this is another tough loss for them this season. They now fall to 6-3 after punishing Northwestern 2 weeks before. So they had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and they played well at times, but they struggled for the most part, and they couldn't finish it. Next week they're going to play Minnesota, and that's the game I just mentioned. Wisconsin fans are really rooting for them. And then they end the season 1 game at home against Illinois, and then the last game in Lincoln against Nebraska for the Black Friday game. I'm not sure about the Minnesota game. Minnesota's looking great right now. I don't know if Iowa has enough talent to win that game compared to Minnesota's receivers and running game. For Illinois is on a roll, but Iowa should be able to beat them considering the way they're playing this season, how good they are. And then they finish the season against Nebraska. I'm not sure how that one could go. Could go either way. But I'm expecting, oh boy, they could win their last 3 games, all of them, but they could lose their last 3 games, all of them. I don't see that happening just because I think that Iowa's a well-coached football team. I don't see Kirk Ferentz and that staff letting them lose their last 3 games of the season and finishing that way. But we'll see what ends up happening. They now fall to 6-3 on the season, and we'll see if they can finish it in a positive way or not. And that'll pretty much do it for the games in this video. And then one more thing, we're going to go over the subgroups again for the conference. So the 3 teams that I consider the elite, obviously Ohio State and Minnesota. They look fantastic right now. Penn State, in my opinion, is still in the elite column. They only have 1 loss, and they're still very much in place to win the Big Ten East if they win out. So I still consider them an elite football team. I still think that they're going to be in the top 10 once the playoff rankings come out. So that's why I have them there. For the contenders, I have Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, and Indiana. Wisconsin goes up to 7-2. Michigan was on a bye this weekend, but they are also 7-2 as well. Yes, Iowa did fall to 6-3, and I don't think of them as having any sort of possibility at winning the West. But I still think that they're going to be ranked in the playoff poll even after the loss to Wisconsin. So I think if you're ranked, you're at least a contender, in my opinion. And then Indiana, they're 7-2. They did not play this weekend, but they're looking really good right now, and they should be ranked in the playoff poll. They're ranked in the AP poll right now at 24, and we'll see what happens in the playoff poll for them. For middle of the pack, I've got Illinois, Michigan State, Nebraska, and Purdue. And I know this is kind of unusual from what I was doing before, where the teams with losing records would be considered at the bottom of the conference. But and 3 of these teams have losing records. But because they're all still alive at making a bowl game, Purdue would have to win out. Nebraska has to win 2 more, and same with Michigan State, and then they make a bowl game. That's why I still have them at middle of the pack. Nebraska, Michigan State, and Purdue. No, Nebraska and Michigan State are at 4-5. Purdue's at 4-6, and Illinois is already bowl eligible at 6-4. And then my 3 bottom of the conference teams, these are just the teams with bad records overall. Maryland, they're 3-7 overall, 1-6 in conference play. Rutgers at 2-7, 0-6 in conference play, and Northwestern falling to 1-8 and 0-7 in conference play. So that's where I have the subgroups for this week. We'll see how I move them around for next week. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for this video. If you guys could please leave a like on this video and subscribe to our channel, subscribe to our main SG1 Sports channel as well. That would be much appreciated. Leave a comment on the video as well. I want to know what you guys are thinking about these games, about these teams. How do you think the divisions will work out? How do you think the rankings in the college football playoff poll will roll out? So let me know about those. I'd be happy to read them. But yeah, I thank you guys so much for watching this video. Also tune in next week for our next recap. Have a great day.